So I want to back up a little bit, I guess, just because I've dug into your channel a little bit, and my viewers won't have. And it comes up in a certain number of your conversations, is that you were raised evangelical and then fill in the blank.
And then fill in the blank. Yeah. Well, I mean,
what was your kind of give you an hour here. But.
So that could be. I mean, I've been trying to explore my answer to that question for a good chunk of what this podcast project has been, because as soon as you start actually having real conversations, you start asking some pretty hard questions, I think, and then I think approaching difficult questions in a properly kind of humble way, you don't necessarily end up with a simple answer. And so it's a question for me. It's a deep identity question. Because evangelicalism, that's like a type of, for people who don't know, it's a version, a strain, I don't know, of Christianity. I guess probably associated mostly with North American Christianity, like Protestant North American Christianity, and I guess also really associated with like kind of Holy Spirit culture, which is like
Southern.
It could be like Southern. I mean, I don't think Southern Baptist wouldn't fit in that category, because I think that's a different denomination. But it's like there's connections between all these communities. But like my experience of evangelicalism is like a really deep focus on like a personal relationship with God,
right?
And kind of exploring very spiritual, like music.
Okay.
Yeah, it was music and like jumping around and like.
Okay. So I've never been to an evangelical service.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like a Catholic. You walk in like very somber. It's not like a bunch of icons. It's like you get in there and it's a bunch of probably kind of geeky people playing, but really heartfelt music and raising their hands.
Yep.
And usually singing together. And it's like it's such an interesting thing for me. Like you said, okay, so I haven't even got to answer the question yet. You asked me, okay, so I grew up evangelical and then what? And it's like, every time I try to think about it again, it's like there's so much tension there, because on one side of it...
Let me interrupt you quickly, because I think to some degree in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's mind, evangelical is synonymous with, like being preachy.
Offend me, yeah. No, I was going to say, just go for it.
Yeah. But being like, there's so many people who are casual Catholics.
Right.
But not...
it's like evangelism, right?
Yeah,
it's like the other words, right?
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, evangelizing.
Yeah. I was actually doing some looking into like where the name evangelical came from. I think evangel has something to do with somebody's take on just the gospel itself. It doesn't necessarily like linguistically it didn't always mean like some people that go out and like sort of try to shove their tradition down other people's throats.
Right.
Or
I
whatever,
feel like that definition came afterwards.
Yeah. It's like, how did that happen? But yeah, that wasn't obviously another big part of, especially my experience growing up in that culture, was that's what my family did, is that I literally come from 3 generations back of people who kind of felt so strongly about their spiritual convictions that it's like we need to go around and tell people about this.
Share the
good news. Yeah. So it was like, it started with my grandparents, and then my parents took over their ministry. And so I grew up on the road, like touring 9 months a year, playing music in an evangelical touring ministry thing, right? Where like my dad was preaching. We had a family band. We all played together. Yeah, It was so.
So there was no home base though. It was a touring?
No, there was a home base. Okay, that's what I said. I did grow up in Brantford.
No, but as far as a church goes,
there sort of was. I mean, it's like obviously when we were home, we would go to the same church consistently. It's just we weren't home that much. It was like 3 months a year, sometimes less, sometimes more. As it's kind of got later. So I mean, part of this whole story is that evangelicalism seems like it's sort of winding down in some ways. Okay. Because you see a big angle of it was kind of the touring, like the sharing the gospel with different people. Mm-hmm. That is just feeling, I guess it's sort of gotten a bad name in some ways. But even like within the church community, these churches are not as interested in having kind of outside touring people come in and like share with them. They're kind of more kind of hunkering down, like, this is our thing. We're going to do it our way, right? So there was, as we've got up to like this moment, my parents kind of continued on with their ministry, and it's gone from like, you know, multiple. So like it used to be when with my grandparents were doing it, they would be doing church services 6 or 7 times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, right? This was like people went to church, right?
Yeah.
And then it kind of gradually went down to, I remember as a kid, it was pretty normal to maybe there'd be a Wednesday thing, and then there was Sunday morning and Sunday evening church, right? Okay. And then by the end of it, Wednesdays were becoming quite rare, and nobody really wanted to go Sunday. I guess it was like probably just Sunday morning or maybe just Sunday evening. I think probably ended up just being just Sunday morning a lot of times. I think that's probably how a lot of evangelical churches, that's their kind of schedule now. It's just like they do something Sunday morning, and then maybe there's certain events throughout the week, but those are kind of more optional.
Right. So what was your, I think like anyone who was raised going to church, and there comes a time when you're 11 to whatever it be, 19, and kids are questioning you why you believe in God because their parents say God doesn't exist, and that's a bunch of nonsense, and then you have to defend your beliefs.
Oh yeah,
and then the exercise starts.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I kind of took this personally. My mom always told me she named me Garrett because that meant brave warrior. Okay. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be a warrior for the faith, Yeah. So I didn't necessarily, I wasn't like trying to tear these kids apart, beat them up if they question my faith, but I was into, we called it apologetics, right? That's where you like learn all of the arguments to defend your faith. Okay, yeah. And so people would ask me, and I would be like, yeah, this is how I know that evolution isn't true, okay? This is how I know that God is real and he exists. And I got the math. It works out here,
Yep. Yeah. And if you look here, the chariots are here in the
I can decode it. It's all in here in the book,
Yeah.
So that really drew me in. I was all into that, especially even all throughout high school. Yeah.
Did you go to a public high school?
No, touring most of the year, right? That wasn't really possible. So
homeschooled.
I was homeschooled. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you weren't as exposed as a lot of kids were.
No, definitely not.
Right. Did you go to university?
I was going hard, man. I went to Bible college.
Wow.
Okay. And this wasn't even like an accredited, like real Bible college. This was like a kind of an indie. I won't say it wasn't real. Yeah. There aren't a lot of schools that you could transfer the credits from this school to.
Got it.
That's what we'll say.
Got it.
But it was a school primarily focused on sort of training people up to become missionaries and go to other countries and
right,
and teach, spread the gospel, spread the good news.
Yep.
Right.
And so was that was your plan?
Well,
is your plan? I don't know.
No, yeah. So I both of my sisters before me had gone to this school, and so I was just trying to figure out, probably like most kids at that age, like, okay, it seems like I could go to this school, I could go to that school. I don't know. I have no idea what to do. How do you be an adult? And so I was just, but the question for me was a bit deeper because I was like, okay, how do I be a good Christian? Like, what does that mean? And so I thought, I had to kind of just look at the examples before me, and I was like, okay, I guess if you're really taking this stuff seriously, if you really want to figure it out, you got to go to Bible school, and you got to get super, super real with it. And so I was like, okay, I thought maybe there's like some threshold I can pass and become like a true, deeply mature Christian, and then I'll know.
Then you'll know that you know.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, but I wasn't necessarily drawn to like the missionary lifestyle.
Right.
I thought, okay, I need to go to this school and like really learn how to do it, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't a specific thing I was trying to learn how to do. I figured I'll figure out what it is, what's my calling, I guess, at school, right?
Right. And then, so forgive me for my ignorance. How old are you?
I'm 27 now.
Okay. And that's not the path anymore to become a missionary.
No, well, I didn't necessarily commit to that at any point at the school, but yeah, it was kind of progressively clear to me throughout my experience there that no, I don't think I want to do this. And they would kind of push it harder almost every year. It was like, okay, they would do like a special event every year where all the different missionaries that were sponsored by that school would come back, and they would share stories about like, this is what's going on and the mission field needs you. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know. That seems kind of weird. And partly, okay, I'll move the story forward here, because as I went to the end of school, I started running into those sorts of questions I would get really excited about answering when I was in high school, that I had answers for in high school, that I started to find some that I couldn't answer as well. And I had a growing bag of questions that didn't have immediate answers, that I just couldn't reconcile. I couldn't reconcile them with my faith. I didn't really know what to do with them. And I had a good friend at school that I ended up spending a lot of time with and having a lot of long conversations with. And we were both kind of wrestling with this, because we kept on getting, just deeper into the weeds of stuff that it was like, I don't know if I could find a satisfying answer for that. I don't know if, and so, it was just this huge amount of tension that grew, because on the other side of it, these people who were here were really passionate about what they believed in. I was passionate. Mm-hmm. I saw people talking about, being able to sort of work miracles, like classic, the stories in the Bible of like Jesus heals the leper or brings the girl back to life. It's like these people believe deeply in that stuff, and they're like, yeah, that's for now. We can still do that if we believe that Jesus lives in us. Right. And it was like, and I had experiences that seemed like maybe that is what happened. I learned to pray for people, and like kind of hope that they would be healed. And I had some situations where it was still, I look back and I don't know what happened there. It seems like something positive happened. It seems like, did they get healed? Did they get healed because I prayed for them? Yeah. How does that work? Right. So, I mean, when you have in one hand a huge bag of unanswerable questions, and then on the other hand, a bunch of experiences that you don't know what to do with either, it's I don't know, it's pretty hard. So I didn't really have a clear direction after I was done school either. Right. Huh.
But your family's obviously fine with whatever career path you take and all that.
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously more, considering how deep they are in this, they were more excited about the idea of me like doing something in ministry. Sure. Right. But no, I mean, I have a pretty good relationship with my parents, and they've been, happy to see me succeed at whatever I can do. Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, where do you want me to go next?
No. I just wanted to, kind of paint the picture a little bit, and because I stumbled across your channel because you're talking to all these, all these super interesting guys as far as I'm concerned, and kind of guys who are right under Jordan Peterson, who he's constantly going back and forth with, and listening to so much Jonathan Pajot lately. Like, the guy is a genius. Yeah. And so clearly you still have this very, Christian there's bent. But certainly a desire for truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, and I don't want there to be a hard, disagreement between those two statements that I'm a Christian, but I still care about truth. That shouldn't be a
no. It's not mutually exclusive at all.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, you can say that and people can relate to it, and they're like, okay, because a lot of the Christians you might have met in your life, it's like, especially, certain extremely ideological Christians, it's like they didn't seem open to talking about anything. They seem ignorant about certain things or whatever. And it's like
anyone can be, whatever they believe.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I went through a time of trying to figure out, okay, can I call myself a Christian anymore? How do I approach that? Because by the time I got done school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I kind of just took a year and was by myself. I mean, it was an especially kind of unhealthy circumstance because I moved away to go to school, right? And then I came home. But I came home not to like a place that I had spent, 17, 18 years growing up in and building deep relationships with, right? I came home to a place that I had spent a few months a year in and had friends that had all, that I was friends with, but they kind of had their own lives, and they kind of had their own deeper friends that they saw all the time. Sure. And so it's like I came home and everybody had kind of moved on with their lives, I guess. And
Yep.
I didn't really have any place to go. So I just kind of sat with my thoughts and sat with, with all these questions, and I just kind of spiraled.
Okay.
I got really, I probably now I would look back and I say I got deeply depressed. And I kind of had to argue my way out of it. And it's interesting because I don't think that that's kind of the answer that I would always, submit as like the way to get through a deep depression or a deep struggle with questions, is that you need to just find the answer. But I did wrestle with some of these questions until I found at least something that was good enough to keep me looking. I got to the place where, I was questioning everything. I was like, I don't know. It was like, it kind of went from theological to philosophical questions of like,
right.
How do I know? It was like, it went from how do I know that God exists to how do I know that I exist?
Right.
And then it was like, holy shit, how do I know that I exist?
Right.
And then it's just like it comes down, I guess, to questions about what knowing is. I don't know. It can sound really stupid if it's like if that question doesn't hit you in a way that feels like it matters, then it's like, why would you ask that?
Right.
But for some reason, for me, it mattered. And then I got to this place where it was like, how do I move on? I don't know if anything exists. I had like a Matrix moment, I guess, where it was just like everything feels fake.
Right.
Right.
So how did you build yourself? Because it's so funny, like the way you said that. I think it would probably be easy to question. Question. You said you questioned your way out, or answered your way out. Like the rational mind could probably question your way into the depression. And I always think the way out of places like that, for me anyways, are through action, not through contemplation. Through just going out and going
just go for a drive.
Go for a run.
Go for a run. Yeah. Go be in the world. Like it's like you'll stop wondering if the world is true if you just go do something in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think I needed at least some, like, just because that whole realm of like of arguing and of like, I mean, that had become a deep part of me since I was a teenager, right? I needed to at least have some foundation there. I needed to have something to work with.
Yeah.
And ultimately what it came down to, it wasn't necessarily so much an answer to all of the questions, but it was just, I got to a frame that I was a little bit happier with for how to approach argument and how to approach sort of rationality, which was just that, like, I guess it's just that I don't take anything for granted. The only things I get to sort of know or have supposed certainty on are I only get to gamble on certainty, I guess. And it's like, so from there it was like, okay, it's not that everything doesn't exist, certainly. It's that, okay, I get to have the experience of things existing if I'm willing to sort of have faith in them.
Well, that's right? Exactly what I was going to say. Is like, that's where faith comes in, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because, and that it was good.
Right.
And that that your actions hopefully will produce the desired outcome.
Right, yeah, exactly. It becomes much more like, I think it was a helpful frame, though, because, I guess especially when I'm having these conversations when I'm a teenager, it's like a fundamentally different question or there's always this sort of dichotomy of like, okay, well, why do you believe in God? I only believe in things that I can see. But it's like, when I went down that rabbit hole of, okay, what do I believe? And then realizing that every act of belief involves a setting aside of totally rational things you could think that would cause you not to believe anything. Like when you frame every action of belief as one of faith, then it's still a huge jump to go and believe in some sort of invisible being or abstract being or something like that.
Sure.
But it's not a fundamentally different sort of belief than believing in yourself or believing in the person being in front of you.
Right.
Right. It's still the same action. It's just it maybe is a bit more of that action.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So then, at that time, like, for me, I was always curious, a curious kid, and I'm 3 years older than you, so about the same age.
Okay, yeah.
And when YouTube came around, it was like, okay, game on. Like, you can look up anything you want, like all these arguments. How do you prove, that God exists? How do you, I've listened to almost every Alan Watts lecture on YouTube or, stuff like that. And then obviously discovering kind of Jordan Peterson lectures right around whatever 2015 or 16 when he, came to prominence.
Okay, so you were a little bit earlier on that train then, because I was going to say I don't think I had heard of Jordan Peterson until a bit later on, until probably it was like just shortly before. Okay, maybe it was 2017, I guess.
Okay, so I think it was the first time anything went viral of his. I was like, okay, who is this guy? And then I watched all of his university lectures. I'm like, I'm going to U of T virtually, watching his, his psychology lectures. And I was like, this guy is on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to date, like that's definitely his most solid stuff. I think it's just those university lectures. That was super, super good, super interesting, super insightful. I mean, that was part of what kind of got me through some of those deeper questions too, was just here was a really, at least to me, a really foreign perspective on Christianity that didn't, it didn't line up with the way that I had been thinking about it, right? But it didn't discard it either. It wasn't sort of disrespectful. It was like, it was just very honest and like, or I guess it just seemed genuine. It was like, okay, I really want to ask some questions about this.
Right.
And it didn't make some of the same, it didn't fall into the same boxes or the same dichotomies that I had grown up with. I mean, I brought up that there was a strong, like, either you believe in the Bible or you believe in evolution. Like that was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, wait, he's talking about the Bible relating to evolution. He's talking about people's minds evolving and then their myths evolving. Like, what?
Actually being an artifact of evolution.
Right. And it's like, as soon as it just kind of, it broke. I mean, not that it's like, I don't agree with every conclusion he came to or anything like that, but at least it was so important for me, I guess, just to see how you could break those walls down without totally discarding what it is that you're trying to investigate. I had kind of been presented this false dichotomy that you can either just believe it all, or if you start to question it, you're kind of headed down the wrong road and it's a slippery slope,
Really? Okay. Yeah. So what other material or what other thinkers or authors helped build your existential base or your understanding of reality back up enough?
Yeah. I would say I was following along with Michael Gungor. I'm not sure if you've heard of that guy. He was an evangelical guy who wrote some of the most popular songs that were being sung by all these different Christian bands and traveling bands too, right? I think we even sang, actually, I'm pretty sure we sang some of his songs.
Like fairly popular stuff?
I mean, this thing, it was popular within that community, but you would never have heard
within
of
the Christian community or within the evangelical community?
I think more specifically just the evangelical community, which I mean,
so it wouldn't be
to be fair, it was a pretty big community,
right?
But you wouldn't have heard of him if you weren't in there,
right?
But he's one of the people I would think of that is a good example of like the ex-evangelical movement, which is another kind of community that's sort of rising up now, and it's a little bit kind of spicy anti-evangelical, like it's a lot of people just kind of talking about their baggage and talking about how much evangelical Christianity fucked them up. And,
yeah.
And so, okay, sorry, to go back to Michael Gungor, he, and sorry, not to even totally dismiss the ex-evangelical movement. I think that's probably important that happens anyways. People need to work through their trauma and stuff like that. But Michael Gungor, he kind of gradually, I was listening to the music and throughout these years of like starting to question his music and his band Gungor, that kind of always reached me, even in those really dark, questioning moments where I just felt like I had no foundation. It was like, he's asking these questions too. This is what I need. And it would, like, these songs would just, there would be a space. I would just cry listening to these songs sometimes, because it was just like, this is where I'm at. I mean, when you feel that, existentially lost, or if you almost like alone, it's nice to know even that somebody else felt that lonely before too. So it's like, even though you're still alone in it, you're not totally alone in terms of across time, people feeling like this,
right?
So but then he started doing a podcast called The Liturgists.
Okay.
And that was originally, it was like, this was at the beginning of podcasting, I guess. It was before podcasting had really
late 2010s or whatever.
I guess, yeah. So it was like early on, right before I had started going to school, I started listening to his podcasts.
Yep.
Or maybe kind of somewhere in there anyways. But it was like podcasts hadn't just become, an hour or a 2-hour conversation thing like that. Like they hadn't standardized into a form yet. People were really exploring the meaning of like, what is a podcast? So the way they were doing their podcasts was like, it was like a story and some music and like a meditation. It was just like a mixed media thing. And it was really good. Like there was a lot of production value in it, but it was also just really deep ideas that hit me. And it was like, this is worth doing. And that was also my first probably introduction to meditation. Like not just, so I mean, I learned how to pray as a Christian growing up, but I hadn't learned, like prayer for evangelicals is like a very conversational thing, right?
Okay.
It's not like, we don't like really do the Lord's Prayer or anything like that very often. It's usually like, you talk to God like he's your friend. And
right.
You're even taught to sort of visualize it like that. You're taking a walk with Jesus. And you're, hey God, this is what's going on right now, and I really need your help. And it's not like and it's cool. It's kind of interesting. It really, I mean, it taught me. It gave me a deep place in my life and in my consciousness, I guess, for God. And I still don't know, if that picture I have of God that's in there is, the final. It's like I don't even believe that's the final. Like that is what God is. But it's like that's my door, I guess, to it. And it's like,
right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but it's like that. It's like I was brought up within this tradition, and I was given all these tools to interact with that depth of existence, I guess. And it's like whether you want to call it God, whatever you want to call it, it's like it was something really deep, and it was something really emotionally meaningful. I mean, beyond just emotions, I think it felt very meaningful, right? And it's like I can have all the doubts that I have today, but it's like still anything that can get me back to that place. If I can kind of suspend disbelief for a minute, and I can still choose to pray in the way that I did growing up. Sometimes I can still get there. Sometimes I can still do that comfortably, even though I'm kind of half wondering if I'm sort of joking myself as I'm doing it. It's like, it's weird that, I don't know. It's like, you get to the point where you want that back. I don't know. I'm kind of spiraling out in this. Where how did I get here?
But yeah, I know what you mean. And for me, it was always, being growing up a very casual Christian, going to Protestant church every once in a while, but going to, getting exposed to all of the ideas that you're talking about, going to Christian camp, which most kids' camps were Christian camps at the time for a week at a time, and being told all these things, you have to have this personal relationship with God. You have to have this conversational relationship with God. And for me, it was always that no one's talking back. I'm not getting answers. It's not a conversation. How do you experience God? And that was kind of a driving question, or a driving force in my, more intellectual, kind of path. Searching is where does the rubber meet the road? Where is the spiritual, like where does it actually take place? Because no one's talking to me. Where is your relation? Where is the relationship with God?
Did you ever talk to like an imaginary friend when you were a kid? No. I was not bad at that. And I mean, I think I was probably more desperate for it because of, being sort of living alone on a bus with nobody but my siblings, right? Yeah. And I had a pretty close relationship with all my siblings because you got to do that when that's all you got. Those are your people, right? And I'm thankful for them. But I did, I don't know. I have a particular memory of like a week that I had just like tried it out, and I had a similar like experience of like getting to know this person, and then wondering if it was real, and then kind of like letting it go because like, maybe
you're talking an imaginary friend here.
I'm talking about imaginary friend.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so
that's
maybe
weird
I'm
because
just not predisposed because a lot of kids have imaginary friends, right? But
but it wasn't like it's like I knew I was doing the work of imagining this friend.
Okay.
But yet still it was interesting to talk to him.
Okay.
And that's what's weird is like, okay, why would it be interesting to talk to myself?
Right.
Right? Like I already know what I'm going to say.
Right.
And so I struggle with, I think probably part of the way I think about it now is that part of what's happening when you are praying and sort of hearing something back from God, and I don't mean, I don't know the answer to this stuff, but I'm just theorizing.
Yeah.
I think part of what could be happening is that you can build a good relationship with a good part of yourself that's like
subconscious.
Right, that's sort of subconscious. It's like if you open up another character in your head and you say, okay, this is goodness, and I'm going to do my best impression of goodness and talk to that, right? It's like, and I don't think that that's even wrong. I don't think that doesn't fit within the Christian tradition too. It's like,
for sure.
I think it's like, so you do your best to sort of imagine God, and you have a conversation with that imaginal version of God, and it's like, all the images we have of God, like you're not even supposed to, in most versions of Christianity, you're not supposed to draw a picture of God. Right? Especially not God the Father. You draw a picture of Jesus Christ, right?
Sure.
But you don't draw a picture of God, like Yahweh, right?
Yeah. Well, you can't.
Well, you can't, because what does he look like, right? You can draw a picture of the burning bush, you can draw a picture of this and that, but it's like, what is it? It's like, there's an apophatic sense of apophaticism is something that I started to learn about through, I'll jump back to Michael Gungor. That was what those meditations were about. And the meditation that I remember, the first one that really stuck with me and that I wanted to keep doing and thinking about was apophatic meditation. And I learned that was like a part of the Christian tradition, just not a part of the evangelical Christian tradition. But
explain that.
Apophatic meditation is, a simple version of that practice looks like, or at least this is the one that they did on the podcast. It was, think about how, I guess you just say to yourself, God is good.
Okay.
Right. And you think about that for a little while. Okay. So what would it mean for God to be good? I guess maybe he like loves people, he takes care of them, probably like, maybe he like makes the fruit grow in the trees and he gives us all the good things. And then you have to take the next step and you say, God is not good.
Okay.
Right. And it's like, why would you say that?
Well, because he's everything.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's all those things you just thought of that you thought of, oh, this is goodness. It's like that doesn't touch it. That's not quite, that's not what goodness is. Because there's times when, it's not good for a tree, for trees to be making fruit all the time. It's like there's something that's like, there's a mysterious cycle that seems to be more important than just the goodness or whatever. I don't know. So it's like, there's something beyond whatever it is, this definition that you have of goodness that you think God is. It's like, that's not what God is.
Okay.
So you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, what about all those other ways in which, God, it's like godness is beyond my conception of goodness. And then you start thinking about all those things. And then you have to take the third step and you say, no, God is not good either. He's not all those other things you just thought about that were counters to what you thought of as good. What God is something that's utterly beyond your imagination.
Right.
And that's like that's the meditation. And maybe you can take it further. I don't know, but it's like,
sure.
It's just to kind of put your imagination of what goodness or what godness is in perspective and say, you don't get it, right? Like this is what it would mean for God to be holy, I think, is that it's utterly set apart from our imagination.
The holy other, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, holy other.
Yes.
And to actually do a practice imagining that, like what would that be, is I think pretty helpful. And it kind of, so any image we can have or any, like let's say we write down a list of commands and we say, this is how you look like God, it's like any one of those might be great. I think probably the best thing that they would do is they would be sort of a sign that point your attention towards, the idea of God. Not to say that God is necessarily an idea.
Right.
I think God is a being, but
yeah,
it's like, but any image, anything you can say, but I don't want to like,
well, I agree. Everything is just the pointing. Everything is just,
but I think it goes beyond that too. And I don't think apophatic meditation is only useful when thinking about God too. It's like, okay, Garrett is good.
Right.
Garrett is not good.
Right.
Or maybe just any adjective you wanted to use about me. It's like, or Gary, I'm going to look at you, right? And like any conception I have about you, even like your face obviously tells a lot about what's going inside you right now. But that's not at all.
Right.
Like, it's like all the conclusions I can draw about you through my interactions through you, or my interactions with you, or my interactions just like taking in you.
Right.
It's like I'm not getting all of it. There's always there's a deeper depth that I could get to if I could set aside whatever conception it is that I've come to.
Right. Right. Because when you take a finite, like it's a fraction, right? You take the finite over the infinite.
Right.
You know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially. But it's like you don't want to go. So, I mean, people, this is almost in some sense, I think, what a lot of evangelical, especially, I don't know, I was going to say moms. But I'm thinking about, because it's like a lot of, especially the kind of the homeschool moms I ran into on the road.
Okay.
They were very fearful of anything that was like mystical. Anything that was like magic, anything that that seemed kind of...
Right, so you weren't allowed to read Harry Potter.
No way, I was not allowed to read Harry Potter.
Got it.
Yeah, that was one among many. I mean, I think there were certain Disney movies I wasn't allowed to watch because there was too much magic in that, right?
Sword in the Stone.
Right, yeah, exactly. You say that as if, did you have this experience as well?
No, not at all. I was just trying to think of Disney movies and I'm like, Merlin's definitely in that one.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. But yeah, it's like there's this distaste for something, things that couldn't be said clearly, for sort of mystery, because that would be the same, like mystical mystery, right? But even that's where apophatic meditation comes from, even within Christianity, is the Christian mystical tradition.
Right.
So there's always been some, or not, maybe not always, but it's a deep part of Christianity, like the mystical tradition of it. Like it's like there's always been the kind of exploring of what can't be said about God, because everything about kind of, or at least a lot of what evangelical understanding of God has to do with is being able to kind of make clear statements about God. Is like, he's real, he loves you, and he sent his son to die for you, right? And it was like, it's like, accept these very clear-cut, true things. And if you can accept the truth, which is like statements, if you can accept that they're true, then you will have a transformative experience, and you will be saved from your sins, and you'll go to heaven.
Right.
And it's like I still whenever I say that stuff, it's like I kind of say it with a wink, because it's like I don't know if that's wrong, but I just don't think that's the whole picture anymore.
Right.
And I don't put it. It's like that's not the center of the way I think about Christianity as much anymore.